Pierce Brosnan, the man who once embodied the world's most indestructible spy, is today confronting the one battle no hero can escape. At 71, the Irish-born actor who charmed audiences as James Bond is watching the sands of time slip through his hands. His family has already endured devastating loss. His first wife taken by cancer, his daughter by the very same cruel disease. And now a new shadow has fallen over the life he built with his second wife, Keely. A diagnosis that threatens everything. For Brosnan, who has lived through love, triumph, betrayal, and heartbreak, this moment is different. It is final. It is goodbye. Pierce Brendan Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in the Irish town of Drogheda. His entry into the world carried no promise of glamour or legacy. No gilded Hollywood bloodline, no father to guide him. His dad, Thomas, a carpenter, vanished so early from Pierce's life that the boy never knew his face or voice. That absence left a hole that shaped everything to come. His mother, May, tried her best. She worked as a nurse, carrying the family alone. But when Pierce was 4, reality forced her hand. In 1957, she left for London in search of work, leaving young Pierce behind in Ireland. The boy who already lacked a father was now without his mother too. What was supposed to be temporary stretched into 7 years of separation. Pierce became the child passed from hand to hand, first with his grandparents in Navan, then with an aunt and uncle in Trim. Each home meant a new set of rules, a new school, and a constant reminder that he didn't quite belong anywhere. Teachers noted his intelligence, but also his distance, always looking out the window, lost in thoughts too heavy for a child. In 1964, at the age of 11, he finally rejoined his mother. She had remarried to William Carmichael, a kind and patient man who worked in a factory. For Pierce, the reunion was bittersweet. He was grateful to have his mother back, but the presence of a stepfather stirred mixed emotions. William, to his credit, never tried to replace anyone. Instead, he taught the boy simple things: fishing, fixing, how to trust again. Slowly, Pierce began to feel anchored. That same year, his stepfather took him to the cinema. The film was Goldfinger. On screen, Sean Connery's James Bond exuded power, confidence, control. For young Pierce, who had spent his life drifting, Bond was everything he was not. He walked out of the theater wanting to become that man. Despite the Bond dream, Pierce's first passion wasn't acting. It was painting. At 16, he dropped out of school and enrolled in St. Martin's School of Art in London. With little money and no safety net, he survived on toast and tea, studying the works of Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. He dreamed of being an illustrator, but fate had a different plan. In 1971, while still studying art, Pierce stumbled into a small South London theater workshop. There he saw a fire eater rehearsing. Rather than leave, Pierce asked if he could try. That daring moment changed his life. His natural presence caught the group's attention. Soon they invited him into the world of performance. By 1973, he enrolled in the Drama Centre London, a school infamous for its brutal training. The program was relentless. 60% of students dropped out. The instructors broke down their pupils emotionally, testing endurance as much as talent. Many cracked under the pressure. But Pierce endured. He studied Shakespeare, trained in mime, and even practiced circus skills. It cost him more than he could afford, but he refused to quit. In 1976, he landed his first professional role, a stage production of Wait Until Dark. His performance revealed a sharp edge, something cold, unsettling. The next year, he took on Tennessee Williams' troubled play, The Red Devil Battery Sign. Critics noticed him. He was no longer just a struggling art student. He was an actor to watch. His early film career began with small, nearly invisible roles. In 1980's The Mirror cracked, he shared the screen with Elizabeth Taylor for barely 30 seconds. That same year, he played a minor IRA member in The Long Good Friday. They were small steps, but each one edged him closer to recognition. Then came the real break. In 1982, Brosnan auditioned for a small role on a new NBC series called Remington Steele. He wasn't aiming for the lead, just a victim role, but producers saw something magnetic in him. They recast the part and handed him the starring role. The series launched in October 1982, and quickly became NBC's second highest-rated news show. Brosnan's suave performance turned him into a household name. Fans adored the blend of mystery and charm he brought to the screen, and soon a whisper began circulating. This man looked like James Bond. While his career was gaining traction, Brosnan's personal life was transformed by love. In the late 1970s, he met Cassandra Harris, a striking Australian actress. Their connection was immediate. By December 1980, they were married. Cassandra had 2 children from a previous marriage, Charlotte and Christopher. Brosnan embraced them as his own. When their father, actor Dermot Harris, died in 1986, Pierce officially adopted them. Soon after, he and Cassandra welcomed their own son, Sean. For a man who had grown up without a father, building this family was healing. Cassandra herself played a Bond girl in For Your Eyes Only, 1981. During filming, she introduced Pierce to producer Albert Cubby Broccoli. The meeting planted the first seeds of Pierce's eventual destiny as Bond. Cassandra believed in him and pushed him toward the role. But fate, cruel as it often is, intervened. In 1987, while Pierce was filming The Deceivers in India, Cassandra fell ill. The diagnosis was brutal: ovarian cancer. For 4 years, she endured surgeries and chemotherapy, while Pierce stood by her side. Their young son, Sean, would pretend to be her doctor, unaware of how dire her condition was. On December 28, 1991, Cassandra lost her fight. She was only 43. Brosnan was shattered. He later said, "She's forever in every fiber of my being." Tragedy didn't end there. Decades later, in 2013, Cassandra's daughter Charlotte, Pierce's adopted daughter, died of the same disease at just 41. 3 generations of women in one family claimed by the same genetic curse. For Brosnan, it was history repeating in the most painful way. By 1994, Pierce Brosnan's life had already been reshaped by tragedy. But fate still had one more twist in store. This time, a triumph wrapped in heartbreak. For years, whispers circled that Brosnan was the next James Bond. As early as 1983, even Ian Fleming's widow remarked that he looked and carried himself exactly as her late husband had envisioned. But every time opportunity came close, something got in the way. When Roger Moore debated leaving the role, Brosnan was a contender. Yet the studio coaxed Moore back with an oversized paycheck. When Brosnan finally seemed free to step into the tuxedo, NBC trapped him by reviving Remington Steele. It felt cursed, always almost, never Bond. Then in 1994, the curse lifted. Brosnan was announced as the new James Bond in GoldenEye. The stakes were enormous. The franchise was wobbling. The Cold War was over. MGM was struggling financially. Bond, the once indestructible brand, was on the verge of extinction. Brosnan's debut would either save or bury it. He saved it. GoldenEye exploded at the box office, raking in $353 million worldwide. Brosnan brought the perfect balance: cool sophistication, lethal edge, and emotional undercurrent. Audiences believed in Bond again. The performance was so iconic it even inspired the video game GoldenEye 007, which went on to define a generation of gaming. But while he looked invincible on screen, Brosnan was still grieving Cassandra. He poured that pain into the role. In his own words, "I think I brought a certain weight of loss into Bond that perhaps made him more human." 3 more Bond films followed. Tomorrow Never Dies, 1997. The World Is Not Enough, 1999. And Die Another Day, 2002. Together they grossed over $1.2 billion. Hollywood declared Brosnan the definitive Bond of the modern era. He was riding higher than ever. And then with a single phone call, it all came crashing down. In 2004, while filming After the Sunset in the Bahamas, Brosnan's phone rang. It was the producers. Their message was cold, just 47 seconds long. "You were a great James Bond. Thank you very much. Goodbye." No warning, no explanation, just dismissal. The betrayal cut deep. Die Another Day had made $431 million, the most of any Bond film at the time. Yet executives had already been screen testing younger actors behind his back. In the space of 3 days, Brosnan lost 3 movie deals, saw his asking price in Hollywood collapse, and let go of nearly a dozen staff. His children watched him cry when the Casino Royale trailer premiered with Daniel Craig. For a man who had lost his wife and daughter, it was yet another kind of grief, career death. Amid the storm, one light remained. Back in 1994, just before he became Bond, Pierce had attended a beach party in Cabo San Lucas. There he met American journalist Keely Shaye Smith. She wasn't dazzled by his fame. She was drawn to the man behind the tuxedo. Their connection was immediate. Within 3 weeks, Pierce flew her to meet his children. 6 months later, they were living together. For Brosnan, who had endured years of heartbreak, Keely was a new beginning. In 2001, they married in Ireland in a ceremony that cost $2.3 million. It wasn't about the price, it was about permanence. After so much loss, he wanted something that would last. He wore a traditional Irish kilt. She walked down the aisle, and he wept openly. Together, they had 2 sons, Dylan and Paris. Brosnan often said Keely restored the home he thought he'd lost forever. When tabloids mocked her weight, he defended her fiercely. In one now famous response, he declared, "I love every curve of her body. She is the most beautiful woman in my eyes." And also because she had our 5 children, Keely became more than his wife. She became his anchor. When Brosnan was dropped as Bond, she was the one who steadied him. When his daughter Charlotte fell ill, she held him together. She gave him back something he thought was gone: faith in family, faith in life. And now, after 23 years of marriage, she is the one facing a diagnosis that has left Pierce preparing, once again, to say goodbye. In 2013, losing Charlotte had reopened wounds Brosnan thought had healed. She was just 41, 2 years younger than Cassandra had been when she died. The same disease, the same suffering, the same helplessness. For Pierce, it was like reliving his wife's final days all over again. He later said, "You're dealing with death. Everything changes." But through all of this, Keely was by his side. And now, in a cruel twist, she is the one in danger. At 61, Keely has reportedly been diagnosed with a serious illness. Details remain guarded, but those close to the couple say the words Brosnan dreaded hearing have returned to his home. The man who once survived being abandoned as a child, losing his wife, bearing his daughter, and being betrayed by Hollywood, now faces the greatest heartbreak of all: losing the love who saved him. At 71, Brosnan knows time is no longer his ally. He has said that Keely is his north, south, east, and west. To watch her struggle is to feel the foundations of his world trembling once again. But true to character, Pierce does not surrender. He walks beside her, supports her, and shields her from the cruelty of tabloids and whispers. And yet, behind the calm, he is preparing for the moment no man wants to face: the long goodbye. When Charlotte passed away in June 2013, just 2 weeks after marrying her longtime partner, Alex Smith, Pierce Brosnan was forced into a role no parent dreams of: comforting grandchildren who had just lost their mother. 15-year-old Isabella and 8-year-old Lucas clung to the family, devastated. The echoes of history were painfully precise. Isabella was the same age Charlotte had been when Cassandra was diagnosed. Lucas was the same age Pierce's son Sean had been when his mother died. For Brosnan, it was déjà vu of the cruelest kind. He stepped in as both grandfather and father figure. While grieving himself, he tried to shield the children from the void cancer had carved through their lives. Friends described him as broken but steady, a man crumbling on the inside but refusing to show it in front of the young. Yet not every child of his found a way forward. Christopher, Cassandra's son, and Pierce's adopted child, spiraled into addiction. After his mother's death in 1991, he struggled to cope. By the mid-1990s, he was battling alcoholism, then harder drugs. Arrest followed, first for drunk driving, later for heroin possession. He worked on his father's Bond sets for a time, but eventually vanished from Hollywood's orbit. In 2012, he was photographed in London, gaunt and hollow-eyed, a far cry from the family's bright early years. By 2024, paparazzi captured him again, still thin, still troubled, living in quiet obscurity. For Pierce, it was another unhealed wound. Loss was not a single event. It was a cycle that kept returning. And yet, through all the grief, Brosnan never allowed himself to collapse completely. Instead, he turned his pain outward, into advocacy. Since 2001, he has served as a UNICEF ambassador. He has marched with Greenpeace, spoken against nuclear testing, and fought for marine conservation. He and Keely have donated millions to environmental causes, restoring wetlands and funding educational programs. But it was cancer awareness that remained closest to his heart. At the 2014 Stand Up to Cancer fundraiser, he delivered a speech that silenced the room. His voice trembled as he said, "I held the generous, strong, beautiful hand of my first wife, Cassie, as ovarian cancer took her life much too soon. And just last year, I held the hand of my funny, wonderful daughter, Charlotte, before she too died from this wretched inherited disease." For a man who had spent decades projecting charm and coolness on screen, here was the unmasked truth. Vulnerable, human, broken, but still standing. Brosnan's pain became his purpose. He knew he couldn't save Cassandra. He couldn't save Charlotte, but he could fight for others. He poured himself into raising awareness for early detection, research, and the families left behind. In interviews, he described grief as a shadow that never fully leaves. But instead of hiding from it, he chose to walk with it, turning darkness into light for others. Through it all, Keely remained by his side. For more than 2 decades, she has been his partner, not just in marriage, but in mission. They built a life of balance, splitting time between their Malibu home and an estate in Hawaii, raising their sons Dylan and Paris in a world far removed from Hollywood chaos. Tabloids often mocked her weight gain after motherhood, publishing cruel before and after comparisons. But Brosnan's defense of her became legendary. In one post that went viral, he declared, "She is the most beautiful woman in my eyes. I love every curve of her body. She is the mother of my children, and she gave me a home." Those words silenced critics. They also revealed the core of Brosnan's love story: loyalty. After losing Cassandra, after losing Charlotte, Keely was not just a wife, she was the fortress that held him together. When rumors surfaced in 2024 about Keely's illness, fans immediately rallied around the couple. Brosnan, however, remained private. Those close to him say he is preparing quietly, bracing himself for another goodbye. At their 23rd anniversary, he called her his North, South, East, and West. She replied, "You are the finest, loveliest, tenderest person I have ever known." For Brosnan, whose life had been defined by absences, here was the presence he feared losing most. Even now, Brosnan continues to work. In 2022, he played Dr. Fate in Black Adam, a role the director said demanded his unique mix of gravitas and calm. At 71, he remains one of Hollywood's most enduring figures, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, unshaken. But behind the charm, friends say, there is quiet preparation. He attends events with Keely, supports her health journey, and shields her from headlines. They were last photographed together in April 2025 at George Clooney's Broadway debut. She wore black lace, radiant despite the whispers. He held her hand steady as ever. For Brosnan, every public appearance now carries a private weight. He has said goodbye too many times in his life, and this, perhaps, will be the hardest of all. The boy who grew up abandoned, the husband who held his dying wife, the father who buried his daughter, the actor betrayed by his own franchise, the grandfather watching history repeat itself. Now the man who once saved Bond must confront the truth. There is no saving the one who saved him. As Pierce Brosnan faces the sunset years of his life, one question lingers. After a lifetime of playing indestructible men, how does the real man prepare to say goodbye? For decades, Pierce Brosnan has been defined not just by the roles he played, but by the tragedies he endured. Every loss carved a deeper well of emotion, shaping the man who would bring depth to the world's most famous spy. His children, Sean, Dylan, and Paris, carry forward his name, his love of art, and his values. Sean became a filmmaker, Dylan a musician and model, Paris a painter and activist. Each of them has spoken of their father's unwavering support, the way he turned pain into protection. As a grandfather, Brosnan has been a steady presence for Isabella and Lucas, Charlotte's children. He never tried to replace what they lost. Instead, he offered what he never had himself, a dependable hand, a constant figure who would never walk away. But his family is only part of his legacy. The Bond years made him an icon, but his activism made him something greater. He marched against nuclear testing, boycotted premieres in protest, raised millions for cancer research, and used his fame not for vanity but for change. For him, Hollywood was a career. Family and justice were the mission. More than any film, any accolade, or any award, Pierce Brosnan will be remembered for how he loved. He loved Cassandra until her final breath, calling her forever in every fiber of my being. He loved Charlotte through her final fight, standing by her side as history repeated itself. And for more than 3 decades, he has loved Keely, publicly, fiercely, unapologetically. Theirs is the love story people cling to in a world where celebrity marriages shatter. It withstood tabloids, distance, grief, and loss. In 2024, Keely dropped more than 100 pounds, not through surgery or shortcuts, but through discipline, patience, and what she called self-respect. Even then, Pierce reminded the world that he loved her exactly as she was. And now, as Keely faces her own battle, Pierce stands where she once stood for him, quietly, faithfully, at her side. He knows what the future may hold. He knows what it means to watch someone you love slip away. And yet, even as he prepares for goodbye, he refuses to let the world see despair. Only loyalty, only love. Hollywood remembers Pierce Brosnan as James Bond, the suave agent in tailored suits, commanding Aston Martins, surviving impossible stunts. But those who know him best remember something else. They remember the boy abandoned in Ireland who became a self-taught survivor. They remember the widower who raised 3 children alone while his career was only just beginning. They remember the father who carried his daughter's coffin, the grandfather who picked up shattered pieces for the next generation, the husband who defended his wife from cruelty, and the man who turned private grief into public advocacy. Brosnan himself once said, "You have to learn to live with loss. You carry it with you." Always he carried it onto the stage, onto the screen, and into his family. It is what made him not just another actor, but a symbol of endurance. At 71, Pierce Brosnan knows the script of his life is nearing its final act. He has given the world heroes on screen, but off-screen, he has shown something more powerful: resilience, loyalty, devotion. Now, as his wife Keely faces her greatest fight, Brosnan is preparing for the hardest goodbye of all. But if his story has taught us anything, it's that love outlives loss. When the credits roll on Pierce Brosnan's life, it will not be James Bond that defines him. It will be the man who stood by his family through tragedy, who loved without condition, and who, in the end, faced grief not with despair, but with courage. And perhaps that is the truest kind of heroism.